Hello, thank you for coming tonight to our Playwrights on Park talk back from Althea and Angela a couple weeks ago on the Porch series at the hill-stead Museum. It's good to see you all again. My name is Sasha Brott, Director of New Works at Playwrights on Park. And we're just going to start our talk back about the play. The playwright should be joining us shortly, calling in. So I know that for some of you, this was your first time doing a Playwrights on Park event. We're really excited because we're reading some great plays to bring this fall, 3 or 4 plays over the next couple of months that will push the boundaries, and hopefully we can do them in person. But I've been watching some play readings like this, so there's a lot of different ways that we can bring them to you. So I guess since you've had some time maybe to marinate on the play, if there's more thoughts you had about the play, I know some of you were saying that you went to the play because you've been waiting to see a play reading with us, others because of the subject matter. So kind of big picture, what were your thoughts on the play itself? Like, what were the moments that stuck with you, I guess, this many weeks later of that really worked for me? That was a good structurally or story-wise, and what was successful for you? If you have a hand, and if you don't, that's also fine. Oh, is Jonathan talking? But I think he's on mute. Oh, I'm not sure if he's talking to us. Jonathan, are you trying to talk to us? Oh, technology.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Sean, do you have every?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Oh, there he is.
Yes, we're here at a restaurant, believe it or not, and sitting outside. And I didn't want to have the restaurant chatter come into the Zoom, so I had it on mute for a little bit. Yeah. So I was just talking to the server, who was asking me how I liked the food, and I thought it was great.
Well, and how'd you like the play? As much as the food?
Play. Oh, the play was great.
He froze, right?
Jonathan, it's interesting because he's at a restaurant and he just. Here we go.
I've got music. I mean, I know music that would be a great opener, great bumper, and then closing too. So that's what I was. My initial thought, and of course, I also thought too, if you can get the Williams sisters to put up some coin to get that thing, on a real stage, that's the way to do it.
Sure.
I'm sure the whole subject matter would resonate greatly with them.
Absolutely.
Todd just got on, so I just want to say hello, Todd. Good to see you in person, and thanks for joining. I know we went through a little bit of craziness to get you on here, but I'm glad it's
sweet Jesus. This is the most tense thing I've done all month.
He's like, I'm trying to get on, damn it.
My God.
It's more stressful than writing a play.
That's it. I'm done. I can't answer any questions.
So just to give you a little bit of people who's on here right now, Darlene and myself are the co-artistic directors of Playhouse on Park. Sasha is basically moderating this, the talk back, and he's our director of new works. Nick is our literary intern, and then we have several people who saw the production that registered for this talk back. So we're really excited to hear their thoughts and your thoughts. And if everybody can go on mute, great, except Sasha's going to kind of lead this, Sasha and Todd. Sasha, you want to start?
You got a train?
Todd? I don't know what that was.
Oh, my God.
Oh, that wasn't a train. That was the delicious shrimp and grits in Rhode Island. So we're a multi-state operation right now. It's kind of exciting. Todd, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry about the hurdles that the internet. I mean, this is how we live now, right? That's
the truth. That's the truth.
So thank you for sharing your play with us. It was really great to start our Playwrights on Park season, and Sean was the one who directed this one. We kind of work in tandem to bring the different plays to the season. So because these patrons didn't get a chance to meet you, obviously, in person, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been a playwright, or whatever that means?
Yeah.
And anything else you want to throw in?
Well, I'm really a generalist in the theater. I mean, I've I trained as an actor and then a director, and found my way toward teaching and writing and management. I currently am managing a historic theater here in Crossville, Tennessee, called the Palace Theater, which I love. So I don't know. I like it all except costuming. I hate costuming, but I like all other areas of the theater, and I just found myself drawn to stories sometimes that I don't see other writers writing about. And so I just I try and write something that is interesting to me. I had never heard this story. I did not know a lot about Althea Gibson. I certainly didn't know Angela Buxton. And I did not know about this story. So it sort of hit me one day, quite literally sitting in the car dealership. My car was being worked on and a sports station was on. And I was half paying attention, and they told the story very briefly, and I just sort of looked up and thought, "What was that? What did I just hear?" And it seemed like the three acts kind of presented themselves, and I just thought, I don't know if I can finish this. I know it needs, it deserves some writing. I'm going to research it in a bit. I don't know what a tennis scene looks like, but I thought I'd sort of launch in and see if anything becomes of it, which I don't know, as a director, as an actor, as a writer, you learn to trust the process. And if it's good stuff, something will come out on the end of the process. And if it wasn't meant to be, it won't. And I love that part of the theater. So.
That's great. And it's funny because, as us who work in the theater can agree with you. You kind of start in one path, but at some point you put all the hats on. And it's funny what you said about costuming. My first show I directed at Playhouse on Park was Othello, and costuming has always been my blind spot, and had all these lovely reviews until it got to costuming. And they were like, costumes are great, but why was Desdemona wearing high heels in the desert? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't see it. And now I see it. So not that still hurts 8 years later, but whatever. I think, by the way, I think Jacques wrote that review. Anyway, so on this play then, that's so right. Inspiration can come anywhere, just sitting and waiting. And I know a couple of our patrons who saw it had a great response to the play, to the story. Some people familiar with the story who had received an award from Althea when she came into Connecticut. For I don't know, there was a local tennis award, and she was the one who handed it out. So they had met her, and other people, like myself, who had never heard the story before, and felt like it had that weight of a story that needed to be told. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of the questions we have in the workshopping part is, where was this the first reading of this play? I know you weren't able to hear. I know we're going to try to get you a copy of it so you can hear how it sounds out loud. But where are you in the process of the play?
Well, I wrote it pretty fast. It just came pretty fast. I mean, I wrote it in several weeks, which is fast for me, at least. I got a book that talks about this and Angela and Althea's life, called The Match. And that was a real inspiration. And some of Althea's autobiography as well was in this. And, there's so much. Althea got a statue not long ago outside the U.S. Open. So there's been a lot of writing about her recently. So a lot of that research was just sort of online. And Angela Buxton has given lots and lots of interviews. So I was able to listen to her and get a sense of her voice. And Althea gave a lot of interviews, so I was able to get a sense of her voice as well. It's fun writing when two characters grew up in two socioeconomic, different environments, and two geographical environments too. And yet tennis brought them together. That was a sort of a cool challenge. But to answer your question, I finished it during the quarantine, and I suppose in a way we're still in the quarantine. But my family and I have 3 teenagers, and we went up to the mountains, and I said, and I've never done this before either. I said, I have a play. I just finished the first draft. None of you are right for any of these roles at all. But it was just so nice to hear, and they were so game to do it. They were completely unnerved by the racial aspect of it. My kids, I mean, I would say probably teenagers today, they're more sensitive to that. They're probably maybe past that. I don't know. I'm always told of how un-PC I am, and I feel really PC, certainly compared to my parents. So I think there's a generational thing going on. So I knew I would get fresh, unvarnished feedback from them, which I did. And we just, we sat around in a mountain house in North Carolina, and I got to hear it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, other than that stellar reading, I've never heard it. So Sean reached me out of the blue, which was, it's just one of those great things that happens to writers very infrequently. And I'm sorry, I was at a family reunion when your reading happened, or I certainly would have been there. So it's really early in the process.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that we got to be a big a step in that process. And I know there was a lot of talk, especially this play coming out. I mean, not coming out, but our reading happening after the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests. So both the importance, the power, and the necessity or unnecessity of language is such a fine line to dance around. But also, as I know was brought up in conversation, you can dance around it, but this is also things that were said to her that drove her, and to take it out, I mean, one could argue, I would argue, right, would lessen the severity of the words and the importance of them to the story. And that's just because we don't want to say them doesn't mean they didn't happen and that they didn't hurt. And they, so, and I know, I believe you and Sean talked about that prior to the reading. And I know Sean talked, Sean, well, I guess you mentioned that process during the reading part, but.
I think Sean looked at it right. And it's exactly what would happen in a development situation, which is where you bring a story into a room, and you trust the process, you trust the room, and you look at actors' faces when they have to read your lines, and you trust the director. And I think I was getting from him that there was a wince factor on some of the racial epithets. And that's meaningful because I actually had to research what were racial epithets. Were they the same or different 70 years ago? And, I'm sorry to say I learned a whole lot more, things that just aren't, they're just not really in our lexicon so much anymore. She heard the N-word just as the N-word is used today. So it's not like we couldn't use that, but certainly the N-word to our ears has a troubling weight to it that is probably more, I don't know, than when she heard it. I just don't know. But I think it makes sense if some language takes audience members out of the experience of the play. And in some ways, maybe it's better to go with slightly more arcane racial epithets that would have been stressful and disturbing and demeaning to her, but would not necessarily take us out of the experience of the play. What I'm going to say, I can say because I know my relatives won't ever watch this. But when I was at the family reunion, I described my story to my 90-year-old father-in-law. And I told him of this very situation that Sean brought to me and that, we've henceforth been thinking about. And, he's an old Southern guy. And he said, you're right. They were descriptors and he started a list of them. Mm-hmm. And it's quite a list. And I don't think that I even included all of these, but, you grow up in the South and you hear them, you're saturated. It's part of your lexicon. And so that was always the question: is what is enough? Is something too much? And are all the right ones in there? And are they in enough times, or maybe too many times? So I look forward to getting any pages or notations back, because I think that will, any changes I make, that's a part of the process as well.
Yeah, and Todd, just so you, Barbara Lorraine, who's on this call right now, asked at the talkback, how did we handle the process of the racial language? And I told her about, I mentioned that we have an inclusion and a diversity and inclusion committee at the theater that I went to, that I talked to you, that I talked to the cast, that I went back to the diversity and inclusion committee, and then we really decided together, and thank you so much for being just open to our discussion about it, was that as hurtful as this language is for us to hear, we would not be telling Althea's story authentically if it wasn't included in that. It was interesting. Barbara, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you asked me that question. Did you have a thought in regards to that question? Yeah.
Yes, a lot of thoughts, because my daughter directs plays in high schools, and I have several other friends that direct plays in high schools. And in the past 3 years, they have encountered a lot of obstacles in putting on what is considered traditional musicals, to the point where it has dissuaded teachers who are directors in public high schools to think twice about even doing it anymore, because of the problems that they've had. And my daughter, Stephanie, whom you know, has run up against that several times in the past couple of years. And her school has taken on a mission that whatever show is being produced, to make it part of the whole school's curriculum in terms of talking about issues. So they just did Hairspray. So they were talking about even the casting of Hairspray, and the students that were auditioning had many choices on how to identify themselves, not only ethnically, but like let's say they might be Hispanic, but they actually identify more as Puerto Rican and things like that, so that there's a whole lot of conversations that go on. And so that, when you introduced and said, well, there's going to be some strong language that would make people uncomfortable, I thought, okay, so how do you deal with that in terms of the actors? Now, I have another question now in terms of, I guess maybe you prefaced it by saying that it was going to be a lot of strong language. And the language was definitely strong. But I'm not sure it had as shocking an effect on me that I thought that it should have. I should have felt even worse. Now, I don't know whether it was because I was prepared, or I'm not sure. So I think it would be interesting to have other audience members who are not forewarned of that to say how they felt about it when they encountered it in the play. Because I agree with what was said, that it, as an audience member, I should feel very uncomfortable myself hearing those words to help try to empathize with what she might feel. Does that make sense?
Well, I think language is so important, obviously, and what words are going to take individual audience members out of the experience of the play will be different from audience member to audience member. So it's really tricky, which is why you really rely on the room, including the director, if there's a dramaturg there, etc. And you kind of go with you trust the process in that way. You remind me that one thing I had to research was the connotation that Althea and Angela would have had on the words black versus colored versus Negro. This is 1956, 57, and onward, and those connotations were changing. but they had really specific connotations. Now in 2020, all of those connotations are different. You know, I have a very dear friend, African-American guy, who says, don't call us people of color. That's ridiculous. And I'm starting a theater. It's not a black theater. You can't call it a black theater. So even the connotations of those three, I don't want to demean them by calling them descriptors, but it's very different now. So it's like a complexity on top of a complexity on top of a complexity. So Sean, whatever you did, complain to Sean or praise Sean. And I can't wait to see what you did.
Yeah.
It's an interesting balance too. I think often about, I got to assist and direct Robert O'Hara a couple of years ago, and he just directed Slave Play on Broadway, and in the rehearsal room, and this is at Woolly Mammoth in DC, they ended up painting this on their walls because this became his thing. He would say, everyone is welcome and no one is safe. And there's an aspect of theater that I think for me, that should be on every theater's wall, right? What a great way. Like, everyone can come in, but that doesn't mean it's a safe space, but we're going to challenge you. And I think the timing of this play, definitely required some chat about the language, but at the same time, we can't, it's a interesting time for theater, because you don't want to censor these conversations, all right? You want to shine more lights on them, but we're hearing things differently as we probably should be. So did anyone else have thoughts? Sean, you'll pick up a thought in your head.
Well, no, I was just going to ask Jerry and Barbara, because you guys you said you play tennis often, and I remember seeing you at the production, and what were your thoughts about the tennis scenes? Because that's something that Todd and I talked about. He was like, I'd love to see how you did the tennis scenes. And I did a lot of stuff with them in kind of slow motion. But here's the tough part, is that they had to be 6 feet apart, right? And it was a reading. So, and you really want the language to be the most important thing, so people can hear this play for the first time. So I didn't get overly theatrical, but what did you think of how the tennis scenes? I think that's a really an interesting, just as tennis pros that you are. What did you think about that?
Well, I think the way that it was presented was really good, because those that don't play tennis perhaps got the feel for what they were doing on stage. While it could have been perhaps elaborated on, maybe a little bit more.
Sure.
But I think it told the story really, really well. I mean, we've been in tennis for a long, long time. So we've been to Wimbledon. We know about Althea. We've been to the U.S. Open. We've been to France. So, it was a great story for us, because there hasn't been a story like this, especially to my knowledge. I have never seen this on Broadway, and we've seen a lot of Broadway shows. So, I would say that if all goes well, I truly would love to see it on Broadway. Maybe in Playhouse first. But I think it was really, the reading was well done. We did have a little bit of issue with the sound at the beginning, but that was corrected right away. And so,
Are you ready to order? We're going to order some appetizers.
Great. Jonathan, you had a question, but you just put him back on mute.
Okay, here we go. Is that better?
Yes,
that's
perfect.
Good.
Okay. Does anybody know whether Althea had a one-handed or two-handed backhand? Because I was watching on the reading that she had a two-handed backhand, but I'm not sure whether that was in vogue back in the 50s. I don't know.
And I didn't get a chance. I did not get a chance to research that, and neither did Kendall, I don't think. Actually, she did watch a lot of videos, so maybe she did try to study it. I'm not sure. Todd, do you have any idea?
No, I can't remember, but her matches are easily found on YouTube. It'd be easy to see and research that. And if it's incorrect in the script, fix it.
You're all set? Thank you.
And Jonathan was also saying that he thinks that we should get Venus and Serena to fund a full production of this. So,
I have to say, whenever you write about a historical figure, the trap is that it may come out like a book report, and that's what you don't want, and you fight against that as a writer. And I tell you, I didn't know when I started out that the end of this story would tie neatly with the Williams sisters. I didn't catch that until a later anecdote that Angela Buxton said about when Richard Williams reached out to her. And once I realized that, then you just know how the whole play is going to end, because then you realize it lands here at our feet with these two young girls who are now, two amazing women who are among the best tennis players to ever play the game. And here, Serena, when she was, 11, she was doing school projects about Althea Gibson. So it just tied up so nicely and landed right here at our feet in the present.
That's those gifts that you appreciate as a playwright, right?
Oh man, those happy accidents, yeah.
That's really interesting that you said about that's how you realized how it was going to end. Because Nick, is there a question that people were asking about? I want to say, like, what happens to both of them afterwards? Isn't that a question?
Yes, there were questions about what happened to both of them after them, and especially what happened sort of after Althea got the money, and sort of what did she do with that when she had it?
Well, it really affected her health. I think she lived another 13 years. And so, I mean, she bought a Cadillac. I mean, all those things, you have to put yourself in the mind of a sports star who was born too early and had to do without so much in the 60s and 70s. She tried her hand at professional golf, and she was quite a golfer for a good while. But, it's like she hit a window, but it wasn't the window where all the sports stars are rich. She got to be like, what was she like? The chairman of the sports authority in the state of New Jersey, which you think, that's great. And it paid $7,000 a year. She just missed all those great opportunities. She ironically she was a spokeswoman for a white bread company. And it came with no money, but she could have all the bread she wanted. It's absurd. So she really, when she called and said, I wanted to say goodbye because I'm gonna do myself in. I mean, those are quotes. This is what she said. I took no liberties there. She was at the end of her rope. And then to get almost $1 million in the mail. I mean, it's a miracle. And, she put it to, she enjoyed it and she got healthy, and it lasted a good while. Angela Buxton is still alive. I think she's in Coral Gables, Florida. At the most recent unveiling of the statue at the U.S. Open of Althea Gibson, she was right there in her wheelchair, and she was very adamant that it did not look like Althea Gibson. This is very opinionated, very strong. These are very strong women. That's why it's so fascinating to get to put words in their mouth or have their mouths go into my computer. But I think she's still very much alive.
Great. I love that. I love that balance of just the strong, because even anecdotes like that, right, will help push the actors further. You have to still make it your own character. Like this is not a biography, but it's biographical. I like what you said about pushing against that, because it's still theatrical. We were talking about the sports on stage and different plays that maybe we've seen it, and I think maybe to its best effect for me was Take Me Out in 2003, having a full baseball on stage. But when you're using it to tell the story, not to try to recreate something on stage that can't be recreated.
The only scene I can think of is Love, Valor, Compassion, and it's not. It's kind of a double scene. It's usually kind of approximated with sound and movement. And, you know, I like all that. And the great thing about being a playwright is I don't have to direct that. I don't have to do I don't have to stage it. I'll let someone else do that. I wanted to get it so it would, at least on paper, feel right. And so there's kind of three elements in the tennis scene. There's the trajectory of the scoring, which is accurate. There are a handful of elements that are historically accurate. You know, the lightning hit here, her brassiere broke here, etc. A person yelled an epithet here. And then the other one was just pure invention. It's what I imagined she'd be saying to, you know, another competitor who had rejected this person who she's fast becoming friends with, and what she may want to be saying to that other competitor as she's whipping them, as she's beating them. And then once you weave all those together, you realize there's kind of a staccato nature to it, which feels a little like a tennis game. And that, again, was a bit of a happy accident. It's sort of like, well, let me put this information together, kind of zipper it together, if you will, and see what you got. And happy accident.
That's great. Does anyone else have a question about the play itself, what you heard? Questions for the playwright while we have him?
Darlene?
Yes.
Hi, Todd. I just wanted to say that I've seen all but one of our play readings at Playwrights on Park, and I purposely don't read them in advance so that I can have the same experience that the general audience will have. And to me, this was one of the most well-written, well-thought-out, especially so early on in this process. So I just wanted to give a shout-out to you. I did not know the story. I was engaged from the very beginning through to the end. The little twist and tie at the end of the Venus and Serena with the Williams sisters was really cool, and like you said, a great accident. So just a shout out to you. All of the talk beforehand, because I wasn't on the talks about the language, and I was 100% behind using it, because you do need to understand what she was hearing and what she was feeling. So I applaud you for putting it in there. Again, Barbara, as you said, I don't know, it didn't jar me as much, but again, because we were forewarned, and I was really forewarned that it was going to be there. But I think it still resonated enough to say this had to be incredibly painful for her.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that it's in there, and I appreciate, Sean, that you took the time with the cast to really discuss the fact that they knew it had to be there, and it was really well done. So thank you, Todd.
Thank you for that. Hey, what was the running time?
70 minutes. Nick, was it somewhere around there? It was like 7. I want Darlene. It was around 70 minutes, 75 minutes.
So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's great for a reading, and that's great for an outside reading. It wasn't actually that hot, which was really nice, but I thought it felt just the right time. That was my favorite. Great. That's one of the definitely.
Perfect.
Nick, is there anything that was any of the questions or comments that came out from the first night that you want to ask Todd?
Yeah, sure. Let me see. I've got them.
One of those, and then we could send some of the other ones out to him privately.
And if you're looking for that, I also saw Barbara's hand up. Barbara, did your hand go up, or am I making that up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't Barbara go first, and I can go see. I can pull up mine.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to say that after I had, gone to the stage reading, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who lives in Maryland, and I was telling her a little bit about the story, and then I sent her a picture of the summary, and she wanted to know where she could see it. And I said, well, it hasn't been, it hasn't gotten that far, but a lot of people who are interested in tennis, I think that will be very interested in the story, first of all. But this is a question, and my question is to the playwright, Todd, how much do you think you are looking at the female issues and trying to develop the female issues of being a woman athlete at that time period in history. Like how important is that?
Can you say it again?
Well, a lot has been talked about in terms of both women's challenges because of their either race or ethnicity, and so a lot has been talked about that. But I wanted to know how much you were also concerned about just two women who are, living and trying to be successful in sports at a time when that wasn't happening. How important is that for you to the story?
That's a really good question, and it's. I might just say I don't know if I don't know it yet. I mean, that's another thing I would. I'd kind of rely on the room a little bit. If I always think you picked really, really smart actors. You get a smart director, and anything that's missing will come out in the process. And my experience is, if you have missed something, actors will tell you. So could I have missed nuances or I don't know, deeper motivations that are more gender specific? I just might have. I don't know. I think I was trying to concentrate mostly on the story, concentrate on sculpting them differently enough and historically in a historically accurate way. There may be nuances that I've missed. I'm a white guy, and I'm writing about a Jewish woman and a black woman, so I may have missed something there. But I think if we spend 4 weeks together in a rehearsal hall, I think we get it.
Great answer. Yeah,
that's a really great way to think about the process and why we do this reading series, is that these are not these are not finished pies kind of thing, and there's and you can take them out of the oven at different times, throw in different ingredients and see how those taste. But that's true. I'm working a lot in new works, just the different times things come up, and sometimes really late in the process. Like, we've been saying that the whole time. We can't, and then no one saw it somehow, and you open in 3 days.
I'm still trying to think if she had a two-handed backhand or a single.
I know that was a specific question. I like that someone's really watching this play. Nick, did you have something lined up? I know I don't know what our time is.
Yeah, we should probably wrap it up in a couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. Then I'll just this quick one that kind of came up that I'm actually kind of curious about. So one of the things that we talked about was that part of the reason that Althea ended up with troubles is because she kind of hit that area where like sports stars weren't making a ton of money for sports stars, and after she sort of quit tennis, had trouble supporting herself. Angela also ended up quitting tennis. What did sort of she do to kind of support herself? Was it like how did that end up? As there was someone who was curious about that.
I'm sorry, is the question about Althea or Angela?
Angela. We know that Althea kind of struggled. Sort of, but what was Angela's situation sort of post quitting tennis?
Well, Angela came from a family of means, so her struggle was very different. Her father was a bit of a impresario. He owned a large string of movie theaters. I think there's a taste of that in there, but not a lot. I mean, why would there be a lot? But she had means, and it was new wealth. And her father actually, it's probably a whole other play. Her father did one of these weird things where he literally went to a casino and he won half of the casino's money. He just stayed there and kept gambling, and he walked away with what would be the equivalent of millions of dollars. And it all happened like overnight, so the casino couldn't catch it. And what's that famous song of the man who broke the bank at Monte Carlo? I mean, he's that guy. And then with all that money, he bought this string of movie theaters, which, you know, right after World War II, movies get more and more popular all the time. So she just did not have the struggle at all that Althea did. What she did specifically, well, she moved to Florida. We know that, like I did 11 years in Florida. So I feel like I've passed her at a mall at some time or another. I feel like I should send the play to her too. And she'll be able to pick out where I've done composite things or just fudged with time just a little bit so it was stage worthy. But I feel like I want to send it to her and then see. But I mean, Althea came first from sharecroppers in South Carolina, and then she lived in Harlem, where I think her father was a mechanic. But really working class background, and there was no family to support her. And I couldn't find evidence that her family ever came to see her play tennis. So anyway, I don't know much more than that.
No, thank you for that.
That's great.
Are you going to push to have this produced, or who is going to take the next step?
Todd, do you want to talk about how that process sometimes will work?
Oh, it's a crapshoot. I should be asking you. I mean,
we'd like to see it.
I mean, it's a crapshoot. 20 years ago, an artistic director said to me, Frank Sinatra had just died, and an artistic director said, so I put this Frank Sinatra review on my season, but I haven't written it yet. Are you interested in writing it? And I thought, well, what do I have to say about Sinatra other than, man, I loved the guy's music, and what an interesting life. But I didn't want to lose the opportunity. So I wrote it, and they did it, and it sold out. And since then, over the last 20 years, 400 different productions of this Sinatra review have happened. Now, if you had told me that, I would not have believed it. And I have other plays that I think, that's it. This is my grand statement. This is my, I'll never write better than this. And, you know, it hasn't had an inaugural production at all. So I don't know. I've stopped thinking I could anticipate those things a long time ago. I really believe in fate. I think it's fate that Sean found and read this play. There's plenty of reasons why he shouldn't have, but he did. So, you know, you're going to send me some feedback.
Yep.
I'm going to put it on the New Play Exchange. You know, that it's a 3-character play at a time, which is economical to produce, at a time when we're all, what George Floyd was killed 2 months ago today. So this notion of discrimination and what it can do and how horrible it is in the human condition, we're all thinking about it. So maybe it's a play for this moment, or that might be too lofty a statement. But I think we're thinking about it, and I don't think there are plays like this in the theater that I can find. I mean, I've directed 150 plays. I've never staged a tennis scene, you know, and I know that plays on this issue can be thorny, but I think it's. I mean, I always just admired what they did with what happened to them. They found each other. They did what they loved most. They played tennis. It brought out the best in both of them, and it made for a lifelong friendship, even to the very end. And I think that the world rose up. Oh, it makes me a little emotional. I think that the world rose up, the tennis universe rose up, and helped save Althea in what could have been the last days of her life. I think it's a beautiful story, and it's, you know, any day is the right day to tell a story like that. So I don't know what'll happen to it, but I'll do my best to get it out there and to share it. And, you know, maybe with the good comments from your reading, it'll get another reading, and then another reading, and then who knows.
And to, that's a good way of like from a purely like producing standpoint. Usually, plays will go through several readings and then maybe some workshops, really get the playwright in the room, a dramaturg in the room, and develop the play over a rehearsal period. And then it'll go on to maybe what that world premiere will be. And then you do the same kind of process. And so, I mean, you hear these stories of some of these plays from their first readings to their opening nights go on for 10 years, and it's, so it can be just a very varied process, as Todd was saying.
Or it could be Frank Sinatra, and just like that, right? It's what a crapshoot.
What a crapshoot that we've chosen as our profession.
Well, thank you so much, especially those last words. I think you summed up our feelings on the play, and just hearing you talk about it so eloquently and emotionally. It's a story that deserves to be told, which you've done and heard, which we've tried to help out with. So thank you so much for coming and being part of this tonight.
And thank you so much. It was my privilege, and it was a privilege to me. And thank you for being important early participants in this process.
And let us know when it's on New Play Exchange, so we can throw some recs up there, and so we can help get the word out on it.
It's on there right now.
Oh, perfect. Great. Awesome.
Great.
All right.
Great.
Thank you all. Thank you everyone for coming. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.